All right. Welcome, everybody. We are live, and we return to you with another weekly episode of Cody. You know how many years of nailed down unofficial? Sometimes it's the reject show. Sometimes it's the late reject show, depending on when we're recording it. It was that way for a while. But anyway, the rejects are back again to talk to you. And we're continuing Fantasy November with Willow and Time Bandits. And we are here with Sarah. How are you?
Good. How are y'all doing?
We're here. We're here. We made it. So,
I mean, I'm doing pretty good for today's standards, and
we're here. Made it. Yeah. We're breathing. We're here. We haven't been nuked yet. But
we're
so yeah. Oh, and go ahead.
Huh? Me? I didn't say anything.
Okay, so I think there might be a delay. Might be my fault, but we're kind of killing two birds with one stone with this episode because Chris wanted to do fantasy movies for this part of the show for the month of November. Willow has a sequel television series coming out next week, right? Like,
yeah,
or the week after next, the 30th, Wednesday. So a week from Wednesday. And Ron Howard is a director we are going to be covering soon, and Ron Howard directed this movie, believe it or not. And might be one of the movies you would have to convince someone that's true. And when we listed these movies, Sarah was like, I want to talk about Willow. And I was like, yeah, let's talk about Willow. So it's going to be the end of our fantasy talk, but the beginning of our Ron Howard discussion. But we won't do Ron Howard ratings for this because we're also talking Terry Gilliam's Time Bandits.
Nice. Well, I will tell you right now, Willow, I mentioned this last week with, or week before last, I believe, with Princess Bride. This is one of those that I had back to back that my dad recorded off of Showtime back in the late 80s sometime. And so I had Princess Bride and I had Willow back to back that I would just watch on repeat. So this was my pre-Lord of the Rings. I probably
your primer for fantasy.
Yeah, this was my primer for fantasy growing up. Like, this is the movie that I have to say really got me into fantasy. I was still too young for Conan. Like, for all the violence for all that, so I haven't seen Conan yet. But yeah, Willow, absolutely love this movie. One of my favorite Ron Howard's and Lucas collabs. Brilliant, I think, on every level. And I'll stop gushing and give you guys time to gush over how much you love Willow.
So are we going to talk Willow first then?
I thought we were segueing. Yeah, we were segueing into Willow, but I'm good with either one. So they were both great movies.
Well, Sarah's the guest. Which movie would you like to talk about first?
Well, I'll let you decide because there's Willow, which love, watching. This is my first time watching Time Bandits, you guys.
Yes.
This is, I'd have to say, well, I was just telling Cody earlier that I hadn't seen it. My first time watching it was on TV. This was years ago, cable, probably TNT, no doubt, at 1 o'clock in the morning. But for commercials, I remembered bits and pieces of it. So yeah, this was like watching it for the first time. So
I did watch it.
Yeah, this was Lindsay's first time as well. So very interesting. I did like it. I did.
I think it's Nick's first time as well. So since he's not here yet, let's go ahead and talk Willow.
Okay.
Sounds good to me. Yeah. Well, I have totally already gushed about Willow.
So Sarah, what do you like or love about Willow?
Well, fun fact, first off, my mother almost named me Willow, except she heard the movie was coming out and then changed her mind. So she was like,
That's a
"Oh,
close call. That probably would have worked out. I don't know a lot of Willows.
Yeah, because our
Hey, yeah, you would have been really popular in junior high when Buffy came out.
right."
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no. Those my mom was dead set to name me Willow, and then she had heard that the movie was coming out, and she was like, "Oh, I can't name a little girl after that movie." But no, in spite of that, we watched it so much growing up. We love a Ron Howard joint. Always stand him. And there's something about when he and George Lucas get together, like they have just, they're on the same wavelength no matter what the topic is, I feel. And so I always enjoy whatever they do together, whether it's, American Graffiti or, Willow, or even I am in that one for, I loved a Solo Story. I thought that was a great version of, like, in the Star Wars franchise, but I know not everybody had that same opinion, but I loved it because it also reminded me so much of Willow.
Yeah. I always loved that aspect too, is the fact that, Ron Howard worked with him in American Graffiti, and as Ron Howard started directing, he teamed up with George, and I mean, that's what we got. And man, like you said, those two, that clicked, because that movie, it's just awesome on every level. I mean, granted, you can look at it, I know a lot of people are like, well, he borrowed from Lord of the Rings and yada yada yada.
Yeah.
But what fantasy story hasn't, since the Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit even was published? I mean, I'm not going to say everybody did, but there are a lot of people out there. You can read their books and say, oh, well, I see hints of Tolkien in this, But
Absolutely.
But I think that for the time period, yeah. Lindsay, you have any thoughts?
I mean, I find the movie overall is just so quotable. It has such heart. It has laughs. Like, it's a complete package. There's comedy, there's heart, magic, adventure. It leaves you a feeling of learning to trust yourself. I think Willow has that power in that storytelling. And so, like, I think it's one of those movies you can watch it at any age and you're going to take something new away from it each time.
So I guess I'm a little different from you two. I did not see. I'm not about to poop on the movie or by any means. I was older when I kind of watched it. I was like 13 or 14 because I didn't even know this movie existed. And there was a special about Industrial Light and Magic. I know there's one now on Disney Plus, which you guys should watch. It's really good.
I still need to see that.
But they did a special around the time the Phantom Menace came out for TV about Industrial Light and Magic. And they were mentioning all these other things they worked on besides, Star Wars and Indiana Jones. And I was like, oh, they did a fantasy movie? I need to watch this. And it's pretty fun. I'm a little surprised I didn't see this till I was older because Val Kilmer is like one of my mom's like favorite celebrity crushes.
Some prime Val Kilmer.
Apparently he was Joanne Wally's too, so.
Well, you watched the documentary about him, right? He actually like was kind of like to quote Bambi, Twitter-pated with Joanne Wally when he was in London. But he saw her in a show and even followed the cast to a pub, but didn't have the courage to talk to her. And then they ended up being in this movie together. And, they were married, had a couple of kids. And I guess she's still pretty active in his life because in the documentary, it showed that she attended his mother's funeral with him and their children.
Mhm.
I think, from what I took from it, and I could be totally wrong, I think his method acting kind of went too far. Is what they were kind
Well, I've
mean,
heard
I'm sure
stories
other things.
about Val Kilmer before, like this documentary and his cancer. Like I heard that he had a reputation of being difficult to work with because
Right.
of like his intensity and how serious he took things.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, there's method acting, and then there's
Well, there's
I don't even know if what he does is necessarily method acting, but it's just like he comes in with a very clear vision,
right.
and if you can't convince him in the first like 5 minutes that his vision should go a different way, or like if you can't get him on board with something different, you're wrong. And he's like, "No, I'm right, you're wrong."
It sounded like he was kind of admitting in a Val Kilmer way in that documentary that he was kind of an ass to be working with, for sure.
Oh yeah.
yeah, and this is only his 4th movie.
Hmm.
And you know
And
who
that's great.
almost Yeah. You know who almost got this part and would have been completely different, especially at this point in his career? John Cusack.
It would not have worked
Whoa,
at all. It would not have worked.
man, yeah,
What a weird
that's
parallel universe thought to have.
okay. Do you know who they almost cast Aragorn?
That's the
That's
dude
good.
from Queen of the Damned, Stuart
Yes.
Townsend, right?
Mm.
No, he was cast. He was cast.
but
Yeah.
he wouldn't do any of the work that went into it. And the Viggo Mortens show up. He showed up, was like, hold my beer. You know, I'm an outdoorsman. I hunt. I fish. I archery. You know, so show me how to swing a sword, and we got this. You know, and then the rest is history. But Stuart Townsend would have been such an odd looking.
Well,
voice.
I think it's the same situation too, especially maybe not for Kilmer's character, but I think because Kilmer is a little bit older than John Cusack, because John Cusack would only been about 3 or 4 years older than Warwick Davis. And this is
Mhm.
Cusack very much still playing a teenager in movies, whereas Val Kilmer's like almost 30, so he looks a little more like he's been around, he's seen some things,
Mhm.
which is similar to what wasn't working with Stuart Townsend with Aragorn. He was too young. He was just too young looking for that character, like to pull off what was needed. And I think the same thing. I think you're right. It would not have worked, or would have been, because
I just don't think I could have bought John Cusack as this amazing swordsman. Like I was like, no, honey. Mm-mm.
No, I would just see him out there with like a boombox. You know, holding it over his head.
In
What
the
he-
cage with the boombox. Somebody come let me out.
Yeah, yes.
so instead of confessing his love when he gets the fairy dust put on him, he would have just been playing Peter Gabriel music and Willow.
That would have been so weird.
But
I want to talk about, you were talking about ILM. The part where Willow is trying to turn Roselle back into human form, and she starts shape shifting. That is still great looking. That is still brilliant looking, and they did such a great job with that, along with everything else. The brownies, and I mean, this was top notch.
Oh yeah.
ILM at the time, and I think that's what helped sell this movie. Is they had the backing of Lucas and ILM.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ILM did some of their finest work in this. Like they changed the industry with this particular film. With that they created new technology just for that morphing scene that's still used to this day.
Right.
They were nominated for 2 Oscars for this production for both sound and visual effects, and they lost out to themselves at the Oscars for Who Framed Roger Rabbit because they also did Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
what are you gonna do?
Oh yeah, for Roger Rabbit for the win for sure. Because I just
Mhm.
recently watched that on 4K, and it is even
So
more
good.
gorgeous than
Have you-
ever. Like
Have you
seamless.
seen that video that's going around online of Bob Hoskins behind the scenes, like with the blue screen, like acting with nothing?
Oh,
That's like,
no.
and it shows it side by side with what's in the movie and what he was doing. It's so good.
I need to see that. I've seen stills of that. I've not seen.
Yeah, there's a video where they play both side by side, and it's so interesting to watch.
Oh wow.
I think what I like about that transformation scene is that they play with it with the comedy because Willow wants to be a wizard, but he hasn't quite really learned how to do it. So every time he tries to turn her back, she's like turns into a different animal.
Oh my God.
So
It's one of my favorite quotes too, which is like, "Willow, you idiot."
Yes. Oh, and another thing, one of my favorite parts of this movie is, and you know what, kind of after rewatching it last night, I kind of hold this up there with the Gandalf Sauron wizard battle. Is the old lady fight.
The Rizal and Madmorda.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Man,
Well, that's
she is
what I
setting off
do
some
like.
total emperor vibes.
What I do like is there are like ties to Lord of the Rings. All like there's like even like you could pinpoint scenes where you're like, well, that's Lord of the Rings. Well, that's Lord of the Rings. That's The Hobbit. That's this. But what I love is that it's the female empowerment version of it almost to a certain extent because we have way more strong female characters. Like our two main powerful wizards are women in this movie, and I love that. Which you didn't get a lot of that for fantasy in the 80s. Like the only other one is Lady Hawk, but that doesn't really count.
Well, you had Red Sonja, which was very under the radar at the time. It was, it was supposed to be a predecessor to Conan, but some licensing issues and behind the scenes drama. And that's why you have Arnold coming in as a prince instead of Conan, because that was kind of last minute. But anyway, Red Sonja is a pretty kick-ass character, but you don't see, that was the one movie, but it was considered fantasy schlock at the time.
Mm-hmm. Or you also have like that thing where like you'll get like a female lead in it, but it has to be a young desirable woman still. But this one, old lady fight, and I am here for that kind of level.
Oh, they are punching each other and spinning each other around the room and throwing each other against the wall and crushing each other with pillars and that was great. I loved it.
Oh yeah, it's so good. And the actress that plays Madmorda, like she is
Jean Marsh.
Yeah, Jean Marsh, because she also she ruled as 80s evil witch wizard woman.
Oh.
And she also played Mombi in Return to Oz.
She was married to one of the doctors for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
She was married to John Pertwee.
Oh wow. I was like within inches of touching the wand, Willow's wand, and Bavmorda's crown at ILM, but they were like, don't touch, and I was like, oh my God, I want to just Kaya, I want to wave it around. And, anyway.
I mean, I can see how this has parallels to Lord of the Rings, but I also notice, and apparently Lucas wrote these at the same time, it's very similar to the original Star Wars in a story structure beat.
Mm-hmm.
Like even the characters are like
escape it.
I mean, Willow is Luke Skywalker, really. Val Kilmer is Han Solo.
Mm-hmm.
You got the Darth Vader, Obi-Wan Kenobi battle. You even got like a Yoda guy. The brownies, you could say, are R2 and C-3PO.
I could see Ron Howard reading this, and he leans back in his chair and folds it up, and he goes, "You son of a bitch." Okay, Lucas. I'll direct your fantasy Star Wars. I'll be that man.
But I mean, it makes sense because Star Wars is based pretty much off Joseph Campbell's book of like, you know, the heroism, the mythology of that, like, right? So like, it's all coming from the same inspirations, kind of. And you could even say Star Wars has Lord of the Rings influence in it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, but I just watching it again, I was like, this has a lot of similar, like, beat for beat, pretty close. I mean, I guess, you know, I don't know, like, Princess Leia is split into two characters. She's the baby and Joanne Wally.
Yeah.
That one was a little bit harder. Like, and there's not really a Chewbacca. It's missing a Chewbacca.
I did like
No, thank you.
the soundtrack definitely needs a shout out because it's a gorgeous soundtrack.
So good.
Again, another thing that helps, you know, make it work.
Oh yeah, and the soundtrack kind of just like takes you on a journey as well. Like starting with the little in Willow's village, the jam, like just jams they are playing in the celebration, like the peppiness, like you give an idea of the people. Also, just very reminiscent of Bilbo's birthday. But but like there is. And even like the end music, like when he gets back home and he sees Kaya again for that first time, and there's that swell of the strings, and it's just like, oh, I'm gonna cry.
Yeah, that was a sweet. I like how they wrote their characters too, and I really
Their little
hope
relationship is so perfectly wholesome.
I haven't seen in the little snippets that I saw in the trailer. I saw some of the original actors and actresses coming back, and I thought I saw her in there. But I really hope that she was able to come back for the show that's going to be out. You know, he was 18, I think, or 19 when
he's 17 when they were filming.
Wow,
okay. 17. He was only
and he is
7 years older than the kid that played his son. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, they were talking about like he's maybe 12 years older than the girl playing his daughter. Like,
dang, man.
Well, apparently Lucas wanted him for this part as soon as he worked on Return of the Jedi as Wicket. Like, he was like, "Oh, yeah, this guy, he can act. I want to make this movie. He should be Willow."
Well, I think I've read online that George Lucas wrote Willow specifically for him in mind. Like, he just loved his energy and everything, so he just like, I'm writing you a movie, kid. Wish that was still the case in Hollywood all the time.
Well, also another little fact, because I'm friends with this lady, and I think she autographed something for me, but the lady who plays Mrs. Robin Shelby, who played Slimer, she was in the Slimer suit in Ghostbusters 2. She was actually one of the trolls in this. So because of her short stature, she was one of the trolls in this.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I've got to hear her talk about that before, and it's pretty awesome. Like the different stunts that she helped do, and the getting to meet everybody and be on set. It's pretty cool. But speaking of that, the trolls, that whole sequence with the castle. I know I'm going into something else. The whole sequence with the with the castle and the two-headed dragon is also brilliant. I love that dragon.
Did you guys catch what the name of the two-headed dragon was?
I didn't. I know that there's a toy line.
Did at one point, but now I've forgotten it.
Ebrowski, which is a knock at Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert.
Yes, I remember that story now.
And they took a knock at Pauline Kael too, with General Kael.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Which Pauline apparently did catch that little hint, and in her review, she was like, "An homage to moi." which I don't think any of these three critics gave this film a good review, and I don't know if that was part of it or it just wasn't their vibe. Which is
sometimes they just don't know what they're talking about.
Well, this is a time.
There's a lot of I don't vibe with either Siskel or Ebert's reviews on most things. Looking back.
And as a whole, the fantasy-led, even though there was a lot of fantasy films in the 80s, a big majority of them did not do well financially, and most of them like found an audience like on home video. Mm-hmm. Like critics were not fans of most of these cult movies now, and
nerds.
Like they had a hard time finding someone to like produce this movie. Like MGM, Alan Ladd Jr., I guess, was still working, and he came in for the save, the guy who got Star Wars greenlit. Because people didn't want to make this movie because fantasy films had flopped. But and this is considered a flop, but it apparently made its money back. So I guess they thought it.
Well, I think it was only considered a flop by critics, but not by box office numbers by any means.
I know. Right. I know they thought it was going to be big enough that they pushed a small toy line for this.
Mm-hmm. Boy, those toys are interesting.
Yeah, the toys are very interesting. They do have the dragon, which was cool. I always wanted it, but never. I think they were probably limited and didn't come out for very long because I think they're collectibles now. But I could see where they thought they were like, man, this is going to be
the next Star Wars. Yeah, Star Wars.
It's going to be the Lord of the Rings because he had sequels planned out and he wrote them in novel form.
Well,
he didn't write the novel,
or he didn't. Didn't he team up with someone?
He storylined them, and then Chris Claremont of X-Men fame wrote the novels. But apparently, Lucas does not like what Chris Claremont did with the novels.
Well, no. I have not read the novels, but from what I saw, he apparently took them in a much darker direction, which were killing off a lot of main characters and some of them and things like that. So I don't think George Lucas was happy about that.
Right.
He loves a happy ending to a certain extent. He wants that pretty bow, and I don't think that's what the novels did.
I wonder if they're going to borrow anything from the novels for the show, for the new show.
I don't think so. I think at this point Lucas has said the novels aren't canon to the to the series.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we will see. But yeah, there was 3 of them, and Lucas didn't write them because he was working on the Star Wars prequels. But
Okay, totally off topic, but back to the trolls. Does anybody else? They reminded me so much of the 90s version of Land of the Lost.
Yes. Because I was like, are these trolls or are these like just hairy ape men? Right. And the same thing with the dogs, which were actually dogs with rubber masks on. I'm like, are these dogs? They look like hogs. They look like wild hogs.
They also gave like ROUS's vibes. Like,
yeah. They do have that like kids show furry.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling.
Yeah, like a cross between giant rats and dogs, Rottweilers.
Mm-hmm.
I just wonder how you train a dog to wear a rubber mask for Halloween. Because I got a dog. He could go trick or treat.
Because I got a dog, and I'm just saying.
I guess we got to get Robert back on.
Butter on the inside of the mask. That's it.
Butter's always the answer.
Yep. I will do anything for peanut butter.
Another little fact, going back to just like praising Ron Howard a little bit. I love he kind of keeps things in the family for the longest time. I don't know if anybody else does, but I make up lies and tell them to myself sometimes. And then I have to remind myself, no, that's not what this happens. Like for the longest time, I thought Alora Dannon was Bryce Dallas Howard. That's not the case.
No.
At all.
Baby,
No, she would have been what, like 4 or 5 at that point?
Yeah, it wouldn't have worked out. But at some point, my little brain was like, "Oh, Ginger Baby, that's Ron Howard's daughter."
Well, it has to be, right?
It has to be. But he does still keep it in the family to a certain extent because Gavin O'Hurley, who played Eric, technically is in the family. He famously played Chuck Cunningham on Happy Days, Richie Cunningham's older brother, who at the end of season 1 went upstairs and never came back.
That's right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Dang.
He also was in Superman 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's playing the drunk. Oh, he's so
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of Ron Howard liking to keep it in the family, there's no Clint Howard in this movie.
There's no Clint Howard in this one. I can only assume he was working on something else at the time, but or he just they were like, not today, Clint. Next time, Clint.
But this was kind of a big move for Ron Howard, I think, because at this point he had mostly only directed comedies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so.
Like even Cocoon, even though that's like a feel-good movie with aliens and senior citizens, isn't that still a comedy?
Oh yeah, it's all Cocoon
comedy or
is
comedy.
hilarious, and I will say there are not enough gifs for the great scenes of Cocoon out there, and I'm very disappointed by it because
I love Cocoon. That's a Gutenberg. That's a Gutenberg gem. Right
that's
there.
a Gutenberg joint.
Yeah.
Is that also the movie that made us all believe Wilford Brimley was just always a 70-year-old man? Even though
Yes.
he was like only 50-something then.
Oh yeah,
He's
Like-
the same age as Paul Rudd, people. Or he was in those
Yeah.
films. Think about that.
next to like Glenn Harrington and Donna Machi, it's like, why are you in
Well-
this retirement community?
Oh, I just saw a thing earlier. What's his name? He's in Beverly Hills Cop. He's not Judge
Judge Reinhold?
Reinhold.
Not Judge.
Are you talking about the bald guy?
He was the bald guy. He was 35 years old when
The first one?
they filmed that. Yes.
Really?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, well, he looks like a 50-year-old guy in that movie.
Well, it's also like just making me feel old. Like Reginald Vale Johnson on Family Matters was 35 when the series started.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was like,
I just always assumed they were in their 40s with the kid, you know.
right? No, I just thought like the first season he was 35,
Wow.
and you're like, what?
Do you guys know he was supposed to be the main character of the show?
Yes, and have you seen that Key and Peele sketch about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Nick said he would be in just a moment. He's back, so we can transition into Time
Unless he
Bandits.
wants to talk about Willow.
That's true. We need to see what get his thoughts on Willow.
Yeah. I think it's a fun movie. It's entertaining. I guess I would probably have more nostalgia towards it if I had saw it younger like you guys.
Yeah,
I do think Warwick Davis does a great job leading the movie, and apparently I don't know if it was Ron Howard or if it was George Lucas, but I guess someone above them wanted Val Kilmer billed higher. I think it was Lucas, but Lucas wasn't happy with that choice because he's like, but he's the star of the movie. He's the name of the movie.
It was probably studio related because
Yeah.
Kilmer at that point was more of a name than Warwick Davis.
you know what? I noticed that at the beginning where they're showing the credits, and I'm like, man, how come Warwick Davis's name is not first?
I mean, from just a studio perspective, they probably had to give him top billing because for the most part, there are no other like big names in the film. I mean,
No, there's not. And
Yeah,
he wasn't even
Calvin
really a big name either at that point.
but he still had a little bit more under his belt, I think, movie wise, like as like a name that people would recognize.
Well, he was in Top Gun, which was
Yeah.
a huge movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So they're like, this is the biggest name we got. We're throwing it at you first.
Well, if you guys remember the Tim Burton Batman movie, it says Jack Nicholson, then Michael Keaton.
Mhm.
Right.
And then in the original Superman, it's Marlon Brando, who's in the movie for like maybe 10 minutes,
Oh,
Gene
if that.
Hackman, and then Christopher Reeve.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is not the first time that's happened in a movie.
One thing I love is apparently a lot of Val Kilmer's like lines, he did ad-lib a lot of them.
Yeah, I read that, which is also tying it back to Star Wars because Harrison Ford did the same thing in the Star Wars movies. What Chris and Lindsay, I guess you guys really love this movie because isn't your daughter's name Alora?
Yes. We could not decide on names, and again, this is like one of my first. This is my first exposure to fantasy. Really, this was a favorite movie, and I can't remember if we were watching Willow at the time, but I said, "Well, what about Alora?" I was like, "Why don't we go with princesses? Let's do." And she was like, "Oh, I don't want Leia because that's everybody does Leia." I know. And we were thinking about them. She was like, "Oh, we want a Disney name," and I was like, "Well, how about Alora, like Alora Dannon from Willow?" And she goes, "That sounds great." So we went with Alora, and her middle name is kind of a long story. It came down to dueling families arguing over which name should be carried on for our daughter's middle name, and we're like, well, how about none? Let's go with the princess theme again, and that's where we came up with Buttercup. So we got Buttercup from Princess Bride, so she is named after two princesses.
Oh,
She's a total barbarian.
Oh,
Don't get it twisted.
She's the opposite. She could probably kick all
Her
of
middle
our
name
asses.
should have been Conan, Christopher. I think.
Yeah.
You guys need to just build that will in the backyard, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what?
She would do it too for fun.
I would be scared. I would be honestly like afraid to go to sleep at night.
You just hear that music, bum 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 bum.
Well, that shows like that y'all have a lot in common with Taika Waititi. Have y'all been watching Reservation Dogs?
Yes.
Ooh,
One of the female leads, her name is Alora Dannon as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
because
wow.
her
Awesome.
parents were a fan of Willow.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
We put our nerd stamp on our kids.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's a really well done show, and it's pretty awesome that the whole cast and crew is of indigenous.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of that's done somewhat local to Dallas because they do a lot of stuff in Oklahoma. So there are a lot of you'll find a lot of local Dallas actors on those shows as well.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm. When a very talented local actor, playwright, director, Denise Lee. I spotted her in the first season. She's fantastic in it. I think there's a couple other people, but it was just like it's always like kind of fun to see when they kind of go for local talent to the area rather than like flying people in from LA and all of that.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's some. They've been doing a lot of filming for Yellowstone around here as well.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. I guess I need to talk to more baby boomers because I know that show's like baby boomer crack.
Yeah, they did a lot of that in Fort Worth. They did it was like the prequel 1883. They filmed that. I applied to be an extra on that, but I didn't get in. And now there's another one that's coming about that's going to have Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren in it.
Right.
They're filming some of that now in Cleburne? No. Venus. In Venus, they're filming that
Okay.
there. Mhm.
Hello,
Hey.
everybody. I
Go
apologize
ahead.
so much for being late.
No, we were we were about to wrap up Willow and move into Time Bandits because I know it was the first watch for you as well. So, what are your thoughts on Willow before we move on to Time Bandits?
I thought it was a good attempt by George Lucas at diversifying. Like he wanted to tell different stories, and then fanboys didn't like it because they wanted more Star Wars. It's like, give us the prequels. Lesson learned: be careful what you wish for.
Oh, wah, wah. You
Yeah.
don't like the prequel.
I didn't realize that people were mad at him because it wasn't a Star Wars thing.
Well, yeah. After I think sometime around Empire, he promised like 4 more Star Wars. Well, yeah, finishing up the trilogy and then doing the prequel trilogy, and of course that didn't happen for about 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but also at the time he was, he wanted other stories told, and he was actually planning on Willow being a trilogy, but since it really didn't do that hot at the box office, he decided to get it out another way. So he teamed up with X-Men writer Chris Claremont and created the Shadow War trilogy.
Yeah. Which I heard Lucas apparently wasn't happy with what Claremont did with those books.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Not a fan.
But talking about its box office, do you know what the people of 1988 in America wanted to see more than Willow that year? Rambo 3 and Crocodile Dundee 2.
Fair. Dundee 2 is hilarious.
Yeah, I do like Dundee 2.
No,
That would have been a good double feature. Willow and Dundee 2. I would have
Also
seen
has
that.
Reginald Johnson in it.
Right.
Well,
Does
he
he
was in
play
the
a cop?
first one.
Does
like
Wasn't
play
he
a
the
cop?
chauffeur in the
No,
first
he's a
one?
chauffeur.
Okay.
No, he's a cop in Ghostbusters, though.
Yeah.
I like
And,
to
of course, Die
New
Hard.
York before moving to Chicago and starting his family, and that's where we
And
get.
being tormented by his
That's where we
neighbor.
get Family Matters.
Yeah.
No,
This
he's
mad
not tormented
scientist
by ghosts,
neighbor.
He's tormented by Urkel.
But yeah, it is a very decent movie, and I'm glad Lucas gave Warwick Davis something, an actual starring role.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Above-
that was just after the Return of the Jedi and the 2 Ewok movies.
Mm-hmm.
We also saw.
Yeah.
I cannot remember this gentleman's name, and I really wish I could, but he is in both Bad Santa movies.
Tony Cox.
Yes.
Chris, you must have read my mind because I was like, I was about to bring that up. I was like, I didn't know he was in this movie.
Yes, Tony
He's
Cox.
also apparently the guy in Beetlejuice, the little creepy dude that tries to marry Beetlejuice and Lydia.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
And famously from Sabrina the Teenage Witch. The series.
Lindsay, do you have any final thoughts on Willow?
Oh no, I just love. I'm getting really bad. I guess it's because I'm getting old about quoting movies as I watch them, the ones that I remember really well, and I just I can't stop saying the words along with it. I was annoying myself. I just love when we get to rewatch it.
Yeah,
I will
it's-
randomly just in my everyday life just be like, I stole the baby from the stupid daikini.
Yes, all the brownies.
All the brownies.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, you wanted to talk about this movie. What are your final thoughts on Willow?
I love it. It's an easy rewatch for me. I can go through, watch it I will always find something to laugh at. I will always find something that I find sweet and precious in it. The action scenes, there's always going to be one like, oh, that was nice. Or the industrial light magic. It was like, oh, those practical effects are great. Those digital effects are, considering their time, like those are nice. Like it's a good rewatch movie for me, and I do love to rewatch it.
I agree. It's a comfort watch for me. It's along with Big Trouble in Little China. I can put either one of those two movies on in the background, and they're comfort movies, feel good movies.
Like I said, we love a Ron Howard joint in my house, and we will watch most of his things over and over again.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, I know Ron Howard gets kind of teased in the film world community because he's not like an auteur director. He's a very journeyman director, but he's made more good movies than bad. And even when they're not great, like he does his job, right? He makes the movie. It looks like it was shot. Most of his movies don't go over budget. And from what I know, he's a nice guy.
Great guy. Very talented. He doesn't try and art it up too much, but it still hits those places that you want it to, where it tugs at your heartstrings. You will laugh at it. You will cry in a Ron Howard movie, and he doesn't have to like shove art down your throat to make it happen.
Yeah.
There you go.
Ron Howard is basically a very competent director. Like he knows what he's doing. He knows how to work with actors. He knows how to convey story. And I agree. Not all movies need to be complete auteur tour de forces in order for it to be memorable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that's a perfect time to segue from a journeyman competent director to maybe sometimes the director who shoves too much art in our face, Terry Gilliam.
Yeah.
With Time Bandits.
That really long-ass movies, but they're good.
We love a Python joint.
Yeah. Look, he's one of my favorite directors because of his humor and his imaginative, visionary style. Not so happy with him now in his 80s, and I don't know if it's just him being an old man yelling at the clouds telling people to get out of his lawn, or he is just trying to take a piss out of people. It's probably a combo of the two. Mm-hmm. But I'll let you all say your thoughts first, because this was most of y'all's first time watching this.
So because it was my first time, I really just kind of wrote down initial thoughts as they were happening while watching it. And there's a lot of them. They're random. I kind of just also did my own like Mystery Science Theater making fun of it jokes through this too. So I don't know if y'all want me to go through all of these, but
pick the let's say the top 3 thoughts that kind of stuck out.
Okay. Well, first thought, just through the credits, even fever dream immediately. The whole thing, it just has the air of fever dream.
Aren't all of his movies though?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Because I watched this right after rewatching Willow.
Fear and Loathing is my favorite of his, but go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, you're good. I thought I had like where Willow is an allegory, Time Bandits is all metaphor.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I see a bit of Douglas Adams influence in that movie. Maybe subconsciously.
I mean, isn't the Douglas Adams humor and the Python humor kind of similar in a way?
They tend to overlap, yes.
And I mean, Douglas Adams even worked as a head writer on Doctor Who for a little while, so
yeah.
I can see the parallels, especially at dealing with creation and a very bureaucratic version of God and the devil.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, I'm glad you actually had some thoughts in it, because most of my thoughts while watching it is, what the hell just happened?
Yeah,
I guess
I'm not gonna lie. I was very invested majority through it, and then I really just kind of it lost my interest towards the end, where I was just like, that's when a lot of the plot disappeared. I'm not gonna lie. They weren't even in a plane of time that we could recognize anymore. Um, that's
Yeah.
about when I got to who's the boss in Waterworld.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Oh
Catherine
yeah, Catherine
Hellman.
Hillman. Yeah, she's also in Brazil. Sidetrack, interesting story about her. My wife's name, Jessica, is from a soap opera she was in the 70s, and her name was Jessica.
From
Soap.
Soap.
I think that's what it's
Yeah,
called.
so yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, she
Yeah.
was in that, and also that was where Billy Crystal and Robert Guillaume got their start.
hmm Yeah, Billy Crystal, I think, in that played one of the first openly gay characters in television.
He
Yeah, I
did, yeah.
believe he did. Yes.
Yeah, no,
well, I think going into it, I was I'm accustomed to Terry Gilliam. Like I've seen like almost all his movies. I don't want to say I think I have not watched Don
I haven't
Quixote.
seen a lot of his newer. I haven't seen a lot of his 21st century movies, other than Quixote, which is kind of disappointing because it was a passion project of his,
mhm.
and the Dr. Parnassus one, the Heath Ledger's last movie.
Actually, I did see Dr. Parnassus, and it
Very,
was it
very
was
Gilliam.
interesting how they worked around Heath Ledger's death.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
I think
not having seen it, I imagined Time Bandits was going to remind me a lot of Dr. Parnassus.
right.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
I felt
okay,
a
I can
lot.
see that a little bit.
I felt a lot of because I was just thinking about this movie recently and like, man, I really want to go back and revisit that. And that's Baron Munchausen.
Well, yeah. You
And
could.
I was like, this feels very like because I'm sure they were filmed close together. They're both released.
Well, they're both in the 80s, but Baron Munchausen's 88. This is 81. But this is kind of considered his well, Brazil's not really fantasy, that's sci-fi, but these are all three kind of pinned as a trilogy of some sorts
Mm-hmm.
just wild.
in a way. But this was a big deal for Gilliam as a director because, yeah, he had directed 2 prior films to this. Him and Terry Jones co-directed The Holy Grail, and he directed a movie called The Jabberwocky, which very much is a Python-esque movie. Michael Palin's the lead, and he's a character that gets kind of thrown into the hero's story. He doesn't want to be the hero. He doesn't want the princess. He just wants to marry his frumpy would-be wife and have a boring life as a farmer or something.
Right.
Oh. No, I've never heard of. Of course, everybody's seen Holy Grail, but I did not. I've never heard of the Jabberwocky. I mean, is it how
it was a
close is
TV
it? How close is it to Lewis Carroll's play? Play poem.
I don't think it is very close to anything Lewis Carroll other than the name.
Oh.
It's very much in vein of Holy Grail type of humor in a lot of ways. But this did really well critically and financially too, like for Gilliam. It's probably one of the few times Hollywood actually demanded he make another movie. But that's a topic for another day if you ever know the behind the scenes making of Brazil and the issues of getting that distributed, his vision of the movie.
Oh yeah, I've seen the director's cut, and I saw the part where where I could say where it could have been the theatrical ending, and then I saw the true ending. Honestly, that both endings kind of were. It's like the director's cut ending of Brazil reminds me of the ending of Time Bandits, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, they both have a very bleak,
Kind
dark
of
ending.
kind of a middle finger to the audience.
I
In a
I was gonna say in my notes, I was like, bleak. Time Bandits really stole Kevin's innocence, happiness, and leave him homeless and orphaned.
Yeah.
Well, this does something that I think a lot of fantasy films do, is they're making this commentary on technology in our modern world and how it's kind of killing like the things that were important in society before we became reliant on technology. And watching that game show, which they're watching, I'm like, God, what does Terry Gilliam think of reality TV now? Because this is like 40 years ago, right? Like, he's got to have an even more pessimistic outview of society than he did when he made this movie.
I believe it.
Mm-hmm.
He's turned into an Alan Moore as of late, or been that way for a while. But
Well, I think he's worse than Alan Moore, because have you heard some of the crap Gilliam has said in interviews?
no, not here lately. I don't know.
I
if
have, but I've forgotten them.
It's
Or maybe
it's,
blocked them out from my memory.
it's worse than anything Spielberg or Scorsese or Coppola have said, because basically they're just old men, right? They haven't really said anything. But yeah, Gilliam has said some problematic, not cool things, and I don't know if part of that's him trying to make people angry and upset in a funny way, or he genuinely means that.
Well,
Yeah.
John Cleese has been the same lately,
Mm-hmm.
with a lot of boomer comments, which is or not
Okay. Maybe it's just them because they're around the same age. And, Gilliam was part of Mighty Python. He was the animator. He's the American. He did play a few small parts, but he was mostly an animator for the show.
Yeah. I am gonna go with the bitter old man kind of thing, because during his heyday, he pretty much figured he could do whatever he wanted. Then society marches on, and a lot of the stuff that he did, some of the stuff that he did is probably aged a little bit poorly, and it's pretty much the equivalent of blaming the audience for not getting the joke.
Yeah.
It's that kind of he's taken on like that kind of British trope, where a British person will say something very rude and very mean to you, and then when you act offended, they're like, you just don't understand British humor. Like,
Oh no, I understand. It's like I understand it pretty well, and your joke kind of sucks.
yeah, you're just being an ass.
That being said, about his character of late, at this point in his career, this is a very masterfully done movie in my mind. It's very imaginative. It's got pretty decent special effects, and it's got great acting. David Warner has one of the best monologues ever in a movie. I mean, lasers, day 1, 8 o'clock. That's what I would have done.
Yeah. Actually, David Warner actually sounded like he had a lot of fun making this.
Like his whole thing about what is the point of a slug?
What is the point of the slug anyway?
And there is still that Python-esque humor, especially not just the whole them keep finding versions of Michael Palin and Shelley Duvall,
Yeah.
but John Cleese's Robin Hood. Have you met the poor? Oh, they're so lovely. They don't have 2 cents to rub together, but
Yeah.
Honestly, one of my favorite parts out of this was pretty early on. I was like, of course, Ian Holm is playing Napoleon.
yes.
It's just too good, and it had one of my favorite lines out of the whole thing when he's having the axe come through and he's sending them away, and like the guys come out and it's like the 3 idiots, And he's like, they're all freaks. Not a one of them is under 5'6". What kind of theater are you running anyway?
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised they use, imperial measurements. Like, wouldn't everybody be, it's technically a British movie. Wouldn't everybody be stuck on the metric system?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look at Sean Connery as
Agamemnon.
Yeah.
Thank you. I can never
It did
pronounce.
not read to me that he was playing Agamemnon. I may have checked out at that point, but I was like halfway through. I was like, "Oh, that was supposed to be Agamemnon."
You know what's funny about that is him and I believe Michael Palin worked on the script too. When they wrote it, they described Agamemnon as looking like Sean Connery. They never intended to cast Sean Connery,
Wow.
but the producers are like, "Oh, you guys want Sean Connery for this role?" And they got him.
What quote I have is that revealing someone who looks exactly like Sean Connery or an actor of equal but cheaper stature.
Yep, which that is a
Okay.
Python joke, right?
Yeah, that's great. I could see him too. I could be like, I could see Sean Connery like, I have to make up for Zardoz.
Yeah.
I did think it was neat that he came back as one of the firemen at the end of the movie, though.
That one I missed.
Yeah, at the very end, he does like a little wink and nod, and I was reading because I think they wanted his character of Agamemnon was supposed to come back in and kind of with a whole army and rescue Kevin, and then possibly he was going to be the one that would have died in that big fight scene. But they only had 2 weeks to film Connery's scenes, and they just couldn't make it work because he was filming something else at Pinewood Studios at the time. So they switched out with the death scene, and then it was Connery's idea to just like, well, why don't you put me in at the end as a fireman?
Okay, so this is considered the first of his trilogy of imagination, followed by Brazil and Baron Munchausen.
See,
But,
I have never seen Baron Munchausen.
Ooh, that's a fun movie.
It is. It's very fun.
I recommend that.
It's got Eric Idle, Jonathan Pryce, Robin Williams, a very young Uma Thurman, and extremely young Sarah Polley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I will eventually give it a watch, but it's I don't know why. It's just been outside my radar.
But
honestly,
it's fun. It's very similar to this movie with the humor and the
It's kind of
special effects.
Wonderland-esque, if that makes
Yeah. But-
Actually, do you know about Taika Waititi?
Yeah, he's doing a
remaking-
doing a TV series of this. Yes.
I had not known about that when y'all asked me if I wanted to do Time Bandits, but I was on one of my late night like TikTok like streamings, and I came upon a young woman from Scotland who apparently is the niece of one of the actors who played the Time Bandits in this. She's from Scotland. And the TikTok she had posted was talking about how she was disappointed in what Taika Waititi is planning on doing with his remake.
Huh.
Because they are opting to not have any little people actors in the movie or in the show.
Oh.
I see.
Well, that's not cool.
Okay.
I don't know if it's that they're just. I don't know if they're gonna do the whole like thing where camera tricks to make them look smaller. They're just not going that route. But it does seem like that was especially from what I read. Terry Gilliam felt it was like a needed to kind of help them kind of relate to the child in a certain way. So to him, it seemed like having little people perform some of these lead roles was important to move the plot along to him. So the fact that they're not doing that in the Taika is a little disappointing, and I don't think Terry Gilliam's necessarily happy about it either.
Oh well, he probably wouldn't have been happy to begin with because he definitely has thoughts on the 12 Monkeys TV show Sci-Fi did too.
Yeah. And I liked 12 Monkeys.
So, but I think that is an interesting point of like casting actors of that size to be opposite a child, even though the child Kevin is already taller than the Time Bandits, but that also helps with him. Like it's people of, that they're of similar stature. These aren't a bunch of grown. Well, they are grown men, but giant men coming in there and be like, "We're trying to get to another time in your room," and yeah, I think that, and this is technically a family film, even though some people would probably argue it's not because it doesn't have a nice little happy ending.
Yeah, it's kind of well, like I said, kind of a middle finger in the audience's face, or actually in the main character's face.
Well, it's not his fault his parents were tempted by evil.
Yeah.
Because I think that's really what the message of it might read like an old man being like, get out of your house and read a book or play outside.
Yeah.
It was very, I was looking at that, and that still kind of holds up today with parents with their faces buried in their phones and technology, and that is still kind of relevant.
They were ignoring their kid the old-fashioned way with television now.
Yeah, but now people ignore their kids with phones and technology, and it's the same. It's still relevant. And I was looking at that, especially at the beginning of the movie, where he's over there just really digging a history
book. Yeah,
parents are off in their TV land and
watching the worst show ever.
Yeah, watching the worst show ever, and I guess you could say that about reality TV, but I don't know. I looked at that and I was like, wow, that's still something very relevant.
Yeah, I am interested in seeing what Taika Waititi is going to do with this, but I'm honest. To me, anything he does is probably going to be an improvement.
Oh, okay.
That's my hot take.
Well, I don't know if it's a hot take. That's your opinion. It's okay.
But I mean, it is nice seeing all the. Actually, it's funny. It's a good thing you mentioned the little people because Kenny Baker.
Yeah, R2-D2.
We have 2 Star Wars alumni as our main characters.
Well, Kenny Baker was also in Willow as well.
Mm-hmm.
At the very beginning, during the festival, I think he's one of the band members at that point.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
Who was the other guy that was in Star Wars?
Warwick
Davis, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, from Willow, yeah. I thought you said there was another guy in Time Bandits that was in Star Wars.
Star Wars alumni in each movie.
Okay, yeah.
Arguably playing one of the lead characters. But yeah, it actually the way they interacted with each other was, that was actually pretty amusing.
I was doing some research. I saw in the Robert Hewinson, he has a book about Monty Python, and in it he talked about how the different actors playing little people, that they represent the different members of the Python troupe.
Oh.
Yeah, so Fidget, the nice one, is Palin. Randall, the leader, is John Cleese.
Oh.
Yeah.
Strutter, the acerbic one, is Idle.
Okay.
Og, the quiet one, Chapman. And Wally, the noisy rebel, Terry Jones. And Vermin, the nasty, filthy, loving one, is Gilliam.
Oh,
Oh.
I was like, that kind of makes sense.
I gotta.
Oh.
I kind of want to read. I have. Okay, I'm a bad geek. I have not really read much. I haven't watched much Monty Python's Flying Circus. I've seen Meaning of Life. I've seen Life of Brian, and I've seen Holy Grail, but never really watched their shows.
I recommend it. It's great.
Yeah, I do too. If you liked any or all those movies, you should. And if you can find it, there's a compilation film with a bunch of their shorts called "And Now for Something Completely Different,"
I've heard of that one.
which that's a good one to check out. It's got one of my favorite bits where they use the banana to kill people with.
Oh,
Yeah, I think that's why I like this movie a lot, is the humor, and I just love Terry Gilliam's imagination. Like, it's just such an imaginative movie, and it's fun. Like, it's a fun movie, even with its bleak ending. It's a fun movie, and like, even Evil, when he's like, "I'm gonna turn you into a dog now."
it's like goody.
Like that.
Yeah,
I do like it as a part of, like you said, his trilogy. I don't know if I would classify this as a children's movie. It just happens to be a Terry Gilliam movie where one of the leads is a child.
I think that's more what it is. I don't think it's really a children's film. Like,
No, I don't know if a lot of children would enjoy watching through it. They wouldn't get half the jokes. I feel like a lot of it would kind of go over their head.
I watched the first few seasons of Goldbergs, and this is one of the posters that's hanging in Adam's room is Time Bandits. So, and I remembered that going in to this, I was like, oh, well, it's going to be like a kids movie. It's going to be like Goonies or
Right.
Explorers or something like that. And it doesn't seem like a child. Maybe a tween or an older
as
kid.
I say, I would say maybe 10 to 12 is maybe a decent age to watch this,
Whatever
but not
the
really
age
younger.
range is where Stan from South Park becomes very bitter and hates everything. This is the movie for Stan.
Yeah, that tracks. Oh,
Well, maybe because I was in high school when I first watched this, so maybe that's why. Who knows? Because I wasn't a small kid when I watched this. I was in high school.
Yeah,
the
I was
first time.
older again.
Which it would kind of be that. I feel like that's the proper age maybe to watch this, because like I said, in the end of this, like, this whole movie is about the loss of innocence to a certain extent. And like just that stark, like, just being forced into adulthood bullcrap, you know?
Yeah.
And so I could see like a prepubescent really connecting with that element of it, but anyone younger, I feel like they're not gonna get much out of this for the most part.
No.
well, this is actually my personal opinion. I think most PG movies are meant for the 10 and up crowd.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
And I think this is rated PG, right?
it is.
Yeah.
This is before, PG-13. So yeah, this is more for the old. It's not necessarily a children's movie, but it's more for the older kid crowd who can. They're starting to be able to handle a little bit more complex stories.
Yeah, and that's why, like I said, maybe junior high age would be like the right age for this, because you're starting to have your own opinion on things, and like you said, Sarah, loss of innocence. Like, at that age, you're still a child, but you're about to become a teenager and go to high school,
Yeah.
and you got to start trying to act like what people want you to act like when you become an
Get
adult.
ready for life to run you over, kid, because it's coming and it don't stop coming.
Yeah.
Even Agamemnon ain't gonna save you. He just rides off in his fire truck.
I've got to go. I got to be James Bond again one more time.
Yeah.
But is it Never Say Never Again?
Yeah, don't watch that. If you've never seen it, just you're fine without watching it.
No, look, if you're a purist like I am and you have to watch every single James Bond, including the Peter Sellers Casino Royale, you gotta watch it. It's cheese. But go ahead and do yourself a favor and MST3K through that film because it deserves it.
All right.
Yeah, the best way to watch it.
Actually, if I ever give Time Bandits another try, I probably will give it that treatment.
Oh,
That's pretty much what I had to do to get through the back half of it.
It did slow down. Like,
Yeah. Once the water world boat is a giant hat, and there was a lot of up shots that I didn't need to see. I was sort of like, what are we doing here? What's happening now?
And what was up with that one that one house that it's like they didn't even see the giant coming and then he just steps on them.
Yeah.
just a bit of humor there.
Throwback to one of the other Python films I
Yeah,
saw.
All right.
it's just a bit of humor in that Python-esque way that they had.
A little wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Say no more.
I see.
Although I did enjoy Time Bandits, I have to say, and I think it's a decent movie. Although I do prefer one of the other two, either Brazil or most definitely Baron Munchausen out of the three.
Brazil's
I do
his
prefer
masterpiece in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I do like Brazil a little bit better than
Brazil,
Time Bandits.
yeah, Brazil is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Nick, I do suggest Baron Munchausen.
Yeah,
But
I think you'll like that one more,
Rewatchability.
Nick. It's
Well,
yeah,
I'll see if I can find it.
This double feature for me. Like,
But
yeah.
this was, I will definitely say this is a very, very ambitious movie. It's like around that time, people in sci-fi and fantasy were really starting to experiment, which I feel ultimately led to that whole, the golden year, 1982, when we got all those really awesome movies. Okay.
No, yeah, we did. What are your guys' final thoughts? Is Lindsay stepped out of the room, Chris?
Oh, she's
I'm
right.
here.
Well, how about we hear her thoughts on the movie?
Yeah.
I have thoughts. I'd love to share them. We were talking
Please.
about whether or not you could watch this with your kids. Like, is it a kids' movie? And for a little bit of watching, I was like, oh yeah, our kids would probably think this is cheesy, but they'd watch it. And then we got to the Shelley Duvall and is it
Pansy.
Michael Palin.
Thank you. They're still
Yeah.
yeah, they're a little bit like in the woods and then on the Titanic and stuff. I was like, oh, maybe I don't want to answer those questions after they watch it.
Yeah,
I'm
like
pretty-
what's the issue? What's
Yeah, I'm gonna save
Okay.
All it is,
going
just
on?
that one issue.
It's back again.
Okay. In the media, when they were trying when they don't know what's happening, I need some fruit, quick.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? And on the Titanic,
Oh.
on the Titanic, it was his nose and then his toupee, and I was like,
Yeah.
what's the issue? Like,
What is the special thing? They are very cute in it, though. I love Shelley Duvall.
Mhm.
Yeah, Shelley
And
Duvall.
hopefully that was a much more.
If you guys
I was
didn't
gonna
know
say hopefully it was.
oh, sorry. She's come out of retirement to film a horror movie, to have a part in a horror film. And I can't give you the name of it because it just dawned on me that I remember scrolling through Facebook and seeing that she has come out of retirement and a part in a horror film, and that looks really interesting. Like I'm excited because I've always loved Shelley Duvall. I did watch some of the early episodes on her with the Storybook.
It was some sort of fairy tale show. It was on the Disney Channel.
Mother
Fairy
Goose's-
Tale Theater.
Oh, I was thinking Mother Goose's Rock and
Fairy Tale,
Rhyme.
yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe
It was like
maybe that
Shelley
I don't know. It
Duvall.
was something where there was like
It was on the Disney Channel, and I think Tim Burton directed an episode of one of those.
No, there's a lot of big stars that did those. The only one that I really remember specifically was the Frog Prince with Robin Williams that they did.
I think Pee Wee
she's just
Herman
kinda
did
faded.
something too on there,
Mhm.
or Paul Rubens. I
I
should.
think so.
Yeah.
He might have been Pinocchio.
We'd all
Yep, Paul Rubens is Pinocchio. Yeah.
There's one where Jeff Goldblum plays the big bad wolf for the Three Little Pigs. I've seen that video floating around online.
These feel like fever dream memories that I'm reaccessing. Though, like I remember watching that. That happened.
No, I had heard about the new movie that she's doing, and I am intrigued, but I'm also concerned for her a little bit because I know the last few years she hasn't been doing well, both physically and mentally.
okay.
And so I'm hoping that whoever's working with her on it is doing so with her well-being in mind.
And is a much more chill person than Stanley Kubrick.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh yeah, you were gonna go into like how
hopefully she has family that's helping her. Like,
Well, I was
know,
gonna say,
I
hopefully,
don't
filming
think it
Time
is-
Bandits was a much better experience for her.
I don't think it's family. I think I could be wrong on this because like last I had heard she was living kind of like destitute and alone in like a small Texas town. And that like you would barely kind of recognize Shelley Duvall now. And that there's a fan who's kind of come to her aid. And that you can find some videos of them together. So I'm hoping it's all for her well-being because I think she's lost a lot of her money that she made over the years as well.
Same here.
Well, there's somebody out there who has her.
Because I know Nichelle
best
Nichols.
interest at heart, working on whatever horror movie she's in.
Yeah, Nichelle Nichols kind of had that in the last years of her life before she passed. Was her caretakers were accused of taking advantage of her and booking her for events, even though she was.
She should have been allowed to sit at home.
She she was senile. The caretakers were still booking her for events, and even there was a video going around of her caretaker taking her hand and helping her sign signatures, and that's just it's
that's
sad. I hope
using
that's
them as
not
a cash
the case.
cow. Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Ugh.
There's another video
I
where
have a
it's New Year's Eve, and they're like, "Yay, it's New Year's!" and she's sitting on the couch, and they're having to coax her into being excited. Like, this is an exciting moment. Any person with dementia would be like in the moment, like, "Oh, well, everyone else is clapping their hands, and maybe I should do that," But she's not completely there, and I always felt so bad. But yeah, if that's the case, I hope
I'm not sure how far along she is, but last I had heard she was not in a good place. So I'm hoping that however this is being handled is doing it with the utmost respect for her and her well-being and
Same
all
here.
of that.
Yeah.
I'm seeing some more
I
recent
did not know
photos of
that.
her.
I
Yeah.
just remember seeing her picture in the article and was like, oh, well, maybe that's great. Maybe she wants to come out of retirement, because I knew she was retired and living in Texas somewhere, but I wasn't completely sure. But I had no idea about the mental or financial issues that she has been through. I just figured
But-
if she was like, hey, I'm done. I'm ready to retire. I'm retired. I don't want anyone.
No,
That's it.
from what I'd heard over the last few years, it's kind of a sad tale. So if you are a fan of Shelley
Oh.
Duvall, I do recommend like looking up some of that, and hopefully that whatever the new film is, that it's done
Okay.
well.
This is the first thing she's done in 20 years, too.
Yeah. Same here, Sarah. That's I had not heard that, and that's yeah, that immediately made me think of Nichelle Nichols, and like, man, I really hope that's not the case at all, because
No, I think it was at the last Oscars. I got a little weird in my feelings
her.
whenever Lady Gaga brought Liza Minnelli out on stage. It was the same.
Oh, yeah. That did feel like, why are they doing that to Liza?
I mean, yes, Liza is most comfortable and happy on a stage like that in front of fans, but still, it's like, who approved this?
Well,
Yeah, it was
that's a whole podcast for another day for that Oscars. That
I was. This is the last anecdote, and I will stop. But I was talking to Lizzie earlier before the podcast. We were talking about Val Kilmer, and that came up was during the documentary that was released. He was doing a public appearance for Tombstone, and he was talking about how depressing it was, and like he was glad and fans, but it was also kind of depressing that it was reduced to, I guess. And there's no shame in appearances and cons or anything like that, but he was once considered this Hollywood playboy, or this go-to, or almost not really royalty, but up there. And this many years later, he has these, he's doing these appearances which
aren't necessarily what he wants to do.
Yeah, not necessarily what he wants to do. He appreciates them, but they're also demeaning in a way. They're it's depressing in some sort of way. So
I think there's two sides to it. Are they doing these things, especially people who have like mental health struggles? Are they doing these things to improve their mental health, or are they being made to? Is it something that's detrimental to their health or their well-being?
Yeah.
Something to think about.
Right.
So
we want to encourage to do the things they enjoy.
Yes.
Well, it's different when they're a celebrity person.
There's an untold story with cons, and you got to think about the people who go to cons. They're still working, but they're not as famous as they were for what they're there for. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It could be seen as a step down.
To them, it's
and
and there's actually a lot of depression that comes with that, and a lot of people don't want to acknowledge it, and they'll come out and say it a lot of times. These actors and stuff who go to these cons, they're like, I love that I'm given the opportunity to do this, because it is, again, it's money, but it's also kind of depressing, because I'm not even that doing this.
And that's what you enjoy.
And I don't know. It's just it's a perspective.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying everyone.
Yeah, it's one perspective of it, but there's also the other side of it where people who started off smaller and did cons, and then their following grew from doing that, so they became more famous from doing the cons than their actual work.
Yeah,
and I'm in no way saying
sword.
It's a bad thing at all.
Oh, yeah.
Because there are people like David Tennant. He's still out there killing it, but he's still doing cons, and there are a lot of people like that. But there are people who was third extra in so and so film, and they just want to be known. It's kind of.
Well,
I mentioned her name earlier, dear Willow. Who was one of the trolls.
Yeah. There's an element of it where they want to be known. They want to. There's the part of is it just because they still want to be in the public eye, be famous, or is this at the point where their careers kind of become stagnant, and so now this is the only way they can make money off of what they have done?
Right. And I can kind of see that. Like, let's say I've made a bunch of movies during the '80s and early '90s, and my career has fallen off, and so I'm going to go to these cons, but deep down, personally, it's killing me because it's like, wow, I'm remembered, but I'm not making new content. I'm not out there,
Creating.
I'm not out there creating. Like like you said, I'm stagnant, and I'm not progressing or going.
I'm not trying to play down what anybody goes through with having a career in show business or in the entertainment industry, or what your legacy or what you're remembered for, or what the toll these cons do to people. But Jonathan Rhys-Davies kind of put it pretty bluntly when they asked him about it. He's like, as an actor, you are incredibly lucky if you have that one iconic role or that one iconic thing you were in. And he's like, I am blessed to have been in at least 3 or 4 things people recognize me from. Like, it's a blessing.
Oh, yeah.
Being in Indiana Jones, he was in a Bond movie. He's Gimli from Lord of the Rings,
and Professor Arturo
from Sliders. Yes.
Yeah.
Sliders.
But, yeah.
I was about to say Sliders. I cannot recommend that series enough. That is a great series.
Just avoid the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, they were.
But final thoughts, everybody.
Okay, I think next time I watch Time Bandits, it probably will be with some friends, so I can actually properly MST3K it.
I'm glad that I got to rewatch it, and again, it's a fun movie. But out of the 2, I will always go back to Willow. Good job for both of the directors. They're both visually pleasing. They're both stunning, and yeah, I'm glad that we covered Time Bandits. So, and I'll always be an advocate for Willow. If anyone recommends a fantasy, I'll like number 1, Lord of the Rings trilogy. Number 2, Willow. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad that I can now say I have seen Time Bandits. I probably will not revisit it, honestly. But it was a movie I saw.
Okay, that's totally fair.
I'm gonna start saying that for things I don't care for. I'm like, that's a movie I watched. I watched it. Well, I guess I'll stay on my island by myself who love Time Bandits.
Okay.
I like this movie a lot. I don't think it's Gilliam's best movie, but I think it was a great starting point for where his career went, trying to get out of that Mighty Python shadow. I think Brazil is a better film. Have you seen The Fisher King, Sarah? You might like that one more. It's a drama with Robin Williams.
Yeah,
Yes,
And
I
Jeff
actually have
Bridges.
seen that one.
Mhm.
Robin
Yeah.
Williams in full frontal nudity.
Yep. Willow is fun. I don't love it as much as you guys. I enjoy it. I don't think it's quite up to snuff with Lucas's Star Wars or Indiana Jones stories, but I think it's a good fantasy film. And I can't wait to see what they do with the TV series.
Very excited about the TV series.
One more
Yeah,
And
thing.
hey, Warwick Davis is a
Yeah.
franchise goat, right? Star Wars, Harry Potter,
Yeah.
Willow,
Oh,
Mhm.
actually, one more thing.
Leprechaun.
Oh God, we have to mention Leprechaun.
Don't
Actually,
get me started on Leprechaun.
I want to say one other thing about the convention circuit, the autograph circuit. Before we sign off, I have worked a lot of cons, and I've seen a lot of lot of reactions to having, it's like either being forced to do the con circuit, or they just do it to supplement their income. And I think I enjoy the companies of the ones who actually enjoy the convention experience. They actually enjoy getting to interact with the fans. Funny you mentioned Val Kilmer doing cons, and the convention photo of that I had of my friends and Kevin Conroy. Val Kilmer was one of the big guests. Him and Patrick Stewart. Fortunately, we missed both of them because we were waiting 4 hours in line to see Kevin Conroy, and excuse me, but it was honestly worth it in our eyes because of how cordial he was, how kind he was to his fans.
Yeah.
Same thing when G and I met George Takei. I have okay. There's this story. We went to a Comic Con. I like to get actors to sign things other than what they're famous for.
Mhm.
Like one of Leonard Nimoy's last convention appearances, I got him to sign one of his photography books, and he loved that. I had that in my possession. When we met George Takei, G has this playing card deck of conservative politicians who rally against the gay agenda only to be caught doing gay things themselves. And we got George Takei to sign one of the Joker cards. And he went on for the next 5 minutes about how hypocritical some of those guys are. And when you get them to open up about other things they're interested, actors are just people like you and me, and when you start talking, they're here to talk about the thing they're famous for, but when you start branching out, that's when you get to see them as a person.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I really got to say about that. All right. So
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for agreeing to watch Time Bandits, even though you feel like it was just a thing you watched.
I did.
yes, it's actually really nice meeting you, Sarah.
It's nice to meet you too, Nick.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank
where
you
can
so
we?
much for coming on.
Do you have any other blogs or shows that we can find you at, or is this like your first time going into the whole podcasting scene?
I don't have my own podcast, but I'm fairly active on Twitter or Instagram.
I am so sorry.
I know.
Sarah is actually a voice actor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll have to look up some of your work.
I am on IMDb.
Awesome. All right. So, next on the agenda.
Yeah, Tuesday we're going to be discussing with guest Don Gray Day for Native American Heritage Month, Thunderheart. So we're staying in Val Kilmer land. We're staying in Val Kilmer land.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
then I guess, Chris, you'll have to decide what you want us to talk about for the month of December.
Yeah, I guess, I do want to cover some Christmas movies because I'm a softie for, that holiday. I'm Clark Griswold when it comes to Christmas, as my kids have my kids have started calling me and my wife. Like, God, don't be a Clark.
Yeah.
I
Well-
saw you posted the thing the other day about when Prancer was first released. If y'all talk Prancer, I'm in.
I remember Prancer being
we may
like
have to do that.
advertised a whole lot, and I never bothered watching it. But if
Same.
it's available, I'll give it a shot.
I don't know if it's streaming, but I do own a copy of it.
But I have, of course, they're my favorite. We need to do a Shane Black Christmas.
Well, we've
shows.
done Lethal Weapon and we've done Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, but we should do The Long Kiss Goodnight then.
That's
That's
one
a
of
good
my
one.
actual.
We should.
That's
And
one of my
Die Hard
big
maybe.
Christmas rewatches. Long Kiss Goodnight.
That sounds good to me. That's I'm all for some action Christmas. So, we'll
And we
talk
got
about
an
it
action-
and decide.
We have a Christmas action movie coming out pretty soon too.
Yeah,
Violent
David
Night.
Harbour as Santa as John McClane, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm excited for that. Now,
Isn't
Okay.
John Leguizamo in that?
Yes.
Yeah, he's the bad guy.
there was a movie last year or year before last with Walter Goggins and Mel Gibson.
Fat Man. Yes.
So
Batman.
good.
I recommend that film because I liked it and I thought it was clever and well done. But it's a fun Christmas, adult movie. But we'll decide and we'll let everyone
I think we
know.
have to do something to shout out to all horror Christmas movies. I don't necessarily want to watch every single one, but it does seem to be a very popular.
Yeah.
Well, we could, because there's a new Christmas Story, we could do a Bob Clark double feature with A Christmas Story and the original Black Christmas.
Ooh, that sounds good.
I have done the I Love That Movie podcast where we just spent over an hour of me gushing about how much I love A Christmas Story. So,
I mean, it is the greatest Christmas movie.
Right.
I don't know about that.
No shame, Jimmy Stewart. No shame.
Well, I'm kind of about that Christmas Vacation myself, but we watch that Thanksgiving night. We decorate the tree Thanksgiving night evening after we stuffed ourselves, and we watch Christmas Vacation, and
And then we only watched it about 10 more times between the New Year's.
I love
Well,
that
okay.
movie. I'm sorry.
Christmas at National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation is probably the best of all the National Lampoon's Vacation movies.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, if you're going to be a version of Chevy Chase, Clark Griswold's probably the best version of Chevy Chase to be.
Yes.
Right?
Fletch would be the coolest, which has nothing to do with Christmas or this show, but the new Fletch movie with John Hamm's actually pretty good.
Yeah. Then there's I'm trying to think of some. Oh, actually, another one of my Christmas watches, Gremlins.
Of
That's
course.
I was about to say, because Lindsay was talking about the horror Christmas movies. To me, Gremlins is a Christmas movie, and I watch it every year on Christmas.
Same.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have my discussion of who's your favorite Scrooge.
Bill Murray.
Oh, Murray. Murray, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring that back this year.
And I'm still saying Michael Caine.
Yeah.
Aw.
Yeah. Michael Caine has a soft spot.
Because he does what that whole question is now, put one actor in a movie you love and the rest of the cast is the Muppets. Michael Caine did it. And he
Yeah.
acted and he acted like he was acting with other actors. I know puppeteers are actors, but you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
He committed. He brought his full professionalism to set that day.
Yeah. I'm still going with my three-way tie. Scrooge McDuck, Bill Murray, and Patrick Stewart.
Yes. The Stewart. That was the TNT.
Yes, that was a made-for-TV movie,
Uh,
and that was one of the more more accurate, one of the more book accurate versions of A Christmas Carol.
did you know that he played in a western through TNT called The King of Texas back in the late
I've never heard of
early
it.
2000s?
yeah, it's
I'd like to cast Patrick Stewart as the King of Texas.
Yeah.
I would rather Patrick Stewart run Texas than who's running Texas now. He's a nice guy. He loves dogs, and he's best friends with Ian McKellen.
I mean,
So, yeah.
Triple win. All right, guys. I have not eaten since breakfast, so I am gonna get some.
Yeah. Me neither. So yes, let's.
You guys go eat,
thank you
and
so much.
Sarah, thank you again.
thank
Appreciate
you
it.
so much.
You're welcome.
All right.
We're gonna waste the day, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much for coming in, Nick and
Of course.
Cody. Thank you so much, and Lindsay, my beautiful wife. That's the floating voice off to the side. One of these days we'll have a camera.
Oh, by the way, I know I joked about you being on Twitter, but that's my Twitter handle at Mr. Afro1.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll see most of y'all Tuesday. Sarah, you have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank
Yes.
you. You too.
I'm not sure if I'll be able to make it, but in case I don't, all y'all have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
And you as well, Nick.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. And anyone
Bye-bye.
watching, you have a safe and wonderful Thanksgiving. And, don't have a Knives Out situation when you get together with your family and some of their problematic opinions on things.
Oh, yeah. I've had to talk my students through some of that, so yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Ooh, that's
See you
my whole
later.
family, so I'm ready. I'm geared up.
All right, everybody.
Thanksgiving. Bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Okay, come on.
There we go.
We're
still live. We're still live.
Yeah, I'm trying to hit the end button. I think my screen is froze, so hold on. You may have to see two of me for a minute.
All right.
We'll do the Wayne's World exit.
So you do the alternate endings.
Oh, let's do it. You're still here? The show's
Yes.
over.
Oh,
Go
God.
home.
Oh, you're waiting. Oh, you're looking for the post-credits thing.